This conference will now be recorded.
Next week on Monday, class, come to order. Next week on Monday is Tu B'Shvat, so I thought we would discuss that a little bit. First of all, in general, all the shirim this month have been dedicated Le'iloi Nishmas Eric Sampson, Zichrono Livracha, Azriel Ben David, and today's class in particular was sponsored by Ken Gary. Okay, so we thank Ken. Imagine he'll be here soon. We'll thank Ken for that sponsorship. So we have a very, very interesting Jewish calendar. Okay, we have certain days that are Torah days, right? Days that are mandated by the Torah as holidays, as special days, right? Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuot. And then we also have certain rabbinic days, holidays, as in Purim and Hanukkah. And then we have certain days that don't have any particular necessarily manner of observance, but nevertheless, they are an important part of our calendar. Now, our calendar in general is sort of strange. Let's take a look at the first source for a moment. Arba'a Rosh Hashanim Haim, right? There are 4 Rosh Hashanahs. Talk about confusing, right? What does Rosh Hashanah mean? The head of the year, right? The start of the year. So there are 4 different Rosh Hashanahs. And we are intimately aware of this challenge, right? Because our calendar, class, our calendar is such that Rosh Hashanah, as we know it, is the first of Tishrei. That's the first day of the year. Yet, Tishrei is which number month? It's the 7th month. Nisan is the first month. Tishrei is the 7th month, right? Incidentally, that fits into the general structure that we have, that we always have cycles of 7, with the 7th being the holy of the cycle. We have 6 days, and then we have Shabbat. We have 6 months, and then we have the month of Tishrei, which contains 4 separate holidays: Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and Shmini Atzeret. So the 7th month is the holy amongst the month. The 7th year is the holy amongst the years. That's the Shemitah cycle. The 7th Shemitah cycle is the holy amongst the Shemitah cycles, as that's followed by the Yovel, the Jubilee year, and the 7th millennium, right, is the holy that follows the 6,000 years of this world as we know it. So we have this very strange structure that, imagine we say Happy New Year on the first day of June or the first day of July. That's the 7th month. The first day of July, Happy New Year on the 7th month. But that's what we do, because our world exists within many different spiritual orbits that are taking place. And therefore, in the example that we just discussed, so Rosh Hashanah is considered to be the new year in that it is the day of the creation of mankind. 6th day of creation. And yet, we count the months from Nisan, because that is the month, as we're reading now in the weekly Parshiot, the weekly Torah readings, that is the month of the Exodus from Egypt. That is when there was a whole new world, so to speak, that was created, a world of a miraculous world, a world that transcends nature, along with Am Yisroel, the nation of Israel. So we have these different cycles that are running. So that's 2, but actually there are 4. And Tu Bishvat fits into that cycle, one of those cycles. So let's take a look at that first source that we have, that Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah. The very first Mishnah of the tractate of Rosh Hashanah, and we say there, Arba'a Rashi Shanim Haim. There are 4 Rosh Hashanahs. What are they? Be'echad v'Nisan, on the first of Nisan, Rosh Hashanah l'malachim u'l'regalim. The first of Nisan that we mentioned, that's the Rosh Hashanah for kings and for festivals. The festival year begins with Pesach, that falls out in the month of Nisan, and a king. A king, his reign is not measured, is not counted that a new year begins 365 days after he assumes the crown. But once Rosh Hashanah, once the first of Nisan comes around, that's a new click on his year. So if he started 2 weeks into Adar, the month before Nisan, comes Rosh Chodesh Nisan, he is now starting the second year of his reign. Be'echad be'elul, on the first of Elul, it's Rosh Hashanah l'maser behema. That's the Rosh Hashanah for tithing our animals that are born to the flock. So they have to, within every year, we'll discuss soon why that is, within every year, we tithe those animals, and they are given, I believe, to the Kohanim. Rabbi Elazar and Shimon say, no, it's on the first of Tishrei. On the first of Tishrei, that's what we're familiar, that's what we call Rosh Hashanah. That's Rosh Hashanah l'shanim, shmitin, yovelot, netia, and yirakot. That is Rosh Hashanah for the counting of the year, sabbatical year, jubilee years, and for tithing the different saplings, netia plantings, and vegetables. Be'echad b'Shvat, on the first day of Shvat, Rosh Hashanah le'ilan. That is the new year for the tree. That's Beit Shammai's opinion. Beit Hillel says, B'chamisha asar. Chamisha asar is tet vav. Right, that's the numbers. It's 9 plus 6. We don't want to say 10 plus 5 as we say 15, because that's the letters Yud followed by Hey, which is one of God's names. So we don't want to just, shoot out that name. So therefore, we call it Tu Bishvat. Okay, so the significance over here is mostly in regard to tithing. Okay, when we are tithing, it's got to be done according to within the year. Maaser, la'aser. Right? Tithing is giving 1/10. Well, actually, from our produce, we take off 2%, give to the Kohanim, 10% we give to the Kohanim, to the priests, 10% goes to the Levites, another 10% either is brought to Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, and is eaten there, or on years 3 and 6 is distributed to the poor. So that's what we take off from all of our produce. Comes out to close to 22%. Is distributed from the things that we grow. That's before we get to the fact that when we are harvesting, we leave peah, a corner of the field, for the poor. And when we are actually harvesting the rest, if anything gets unharvested, we don't go back to harvest it. We leave that for the poor. And after we've bundled up all that we've bundled up to transport, if we forgot any bundles, shikacha, we don't go back to get that. We leave that for the poor. So after all that, from that which we are bringing into our storehouse and now piling up as we're processing it, close to 22% of that, 21 plus percent of that goes to others. And that is how we get the bracha. That is how we get our blessing. Right? Natan, to give, is a palindrome. It's read the same way front and back. When we give, we're actually gaining a lot more than when we are giving. but it needs to be done within the year. As the pasuk says in Devarim, source number 2, Aser ta'aser, tithe, you shall tithe, et kol tuat zaracha, all the seed crops of your field, hayotzea sadeh, shana, shana. It's got to be a yearly accounting that is made. It needs to be shana, shana. So when does the year begin for each of these types? For the animals that are born to my flock, the year begins either the first of Elul or others say the first of Tishrei. For the vegetables, it begins the first of Tishrei. For the fruits of the tree, when does it begin? The year. The year is, we have our tax year, which is January 1st to December 31. We have the Beth Jacob fiscal year begins September 1. When we make our budget, begins September 1 and ends August 31. There are different cycles that we have. So for the fruit trees, when does that cycle begin? It begins with a point called Chanata, right, which is when it first starts to bud, and that is on Tu Bishvat. That is when the trees are starting to bud. We'll discuss that further soon. And that is when we start the year for the trees. That's source number 3. Ilan, a tree. Shechantu perotav kodem chamisha asar b'shvat. If it budded, if the tree started to bud prior to the 15th of Shvat, that's considered last year's haul, last year's produce. If it is after Achar Chamisha Asar B'Shvat, the Gemara tells us in Rosh Hashanah, source number 3, after the 15th, then it is for the next year. It's part of the next year's haul when we make an accounting of how much we got and we distribute accordingly. So why is this important? Why must it be Shana Shana, right, each year? And Rav Moshe Feinstein gives a very, very beautiful explanation over here. And it speaks to a topic that we've discussed before, and that is, from the terms that are used, we see the attitude that one has towards something. In English, it's called charity. In Hebrew, it's called tzedakah. Those two words are worlds apart. Charity is, I am the kind, generous, magnanimous soul who looks out at all of my underlings and sees, oh, what can I do to help others out of the goodness of my heart? And therefore, I deem you a charity receiver, and I give you from my charity. In Hebrew, it's called tzedakah. What is the root of the word tzedakah? Tzedek. What does tzedek mean? Justice. Because our understanding is that Hashem, for whatever reason, this neshama needs to be in this position, and that neshama, that soul needs to be in that position. Hashem will give more to some, and they now have to, and less to others. But Hashem has given what is rightfully belonging to the recipients. Hey, Hashem gave that to the donors. And what must they do? Tzedek, justice. They must restore that balance. It is theirs. So when a person, the same way that I have my rabbi's discretionary account, and I'm simply tasked with the responsibility of distributing it to situations, individuals, whatever, institutions, whatever it might be, who are in need. It's not my money. I have no delusions that that's my money. You go to the bank and you withdraw money. The teller has no delusions that that is their money. They're just directing the money. If I'm the account owner, I'm directing it towards where I want it to go. So too, hello Ken. I mentioned Ken that your sponsorship, so thank you. Okay, so a person is just giving out. So if I've earned $10,000 after taxes, take home money $10,000, 1,000 of that is not mine. 1,000 of that was given to me by God as a discretionary account. And I could use my discretion to say, oh, which individuals, which institutions, which causes should I decide to direct this towards? It's not charity, but rather it is tzedek. It is justice. That is what is happening over here. Okay. So the question then is, why was Tu B'Shvat? So therefore it's got to be year by year. It's serious accounting. It's not, my father, Allah Hashem, used to always say, Gene, can you take out the garbage? I'll do it soon. He'd say, soon is never, right? It's not just whenever you want to do it, right? Because it's my charity, I should decide. No, it's got to be a serious accounting. The accounting year begins, the accounting year ends. And actually, on the third and sixth year, that is a time that if a person has fallen behind, that's a time you've got to make sure all the books are cleared. Everything is properly accounted for. So that's how Rav Moshe explains that it's got to be done year by year. Fair enough. But why? Why is Tu B'Shvat, the 15th day of the month of Shvat, why is that the day that is chosen as the new year for the trees? And that source number 4, the Gemara explains, and Rashi explains on it. Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan, that's the new year for the trees. My time, it's the reason. Amar Rabbi Elazar said, Amar Rabbi Oshia, name Rabbi Oshia, Hoil v'yatzu rov gishmei shana. Since most of the rains of the year have already fallen, va'adayin rov tekufa mi bachutz, and most of the winter season has passed. Rashi on that famously says, Shekvar arav rov yimot hageshamim, most of the rainy season has passed. So huzman revia, which is when the earth is being saturated with the rains, with the waters. Va'ala hasraf be'ilanot, and the sap has already risen in the trees. The sap is rising. V'nimtzu haperot chontin me'ata. Now the fruit will begin to bud. Amazing. Whenever I'm walking home on Shabbos, so that's when I have a chance to appreciate and see the trees. You see these incredible trees. Some have lower branches, right, with leaves on the lower branches. Some of them just go up so high till you get to the branches and the leaves, which is where they are creating their photosynthesis energy. And that's got to go all the way down. It's got to go all the way up. Incredible. The whole transportation system. Now, in Vermont, right around now, in Canada, right around now, in the freezing winter, they're putting their pegs into the trees, their spouts into the trees, and what comes pouring out? The sap. Delicious maple syrup. The trees worked so hard, and then we just take it out. Well, leave them some, I hope. Yeah. Right? So it's the dead of winter, but the sap is rising. That is the point of the new year. It hasn't yet begun to bud, but it is going to happen. That which it needs is rising up through the tree. That is the start. And on that, Rav Pam, the great Rosh Hashiva of Torah Vadas, not Torah Vadas, in Brooklyn. He writes as follows: the great masters of Musar and Jewish thought derived many important insights from Tu B'Shvat, which always falls in the midst of winter, while the trees are totally bare of leaves, seemingly bereft of any sign of life. The fields are usually covered with snow, the white shrouds of winter. Yet when the special day arrives, a Techias HaMesim, a resurrection of the dead, begins. Something happens under the earth. Life-giving sap begins to work its way up through the trees to give them new life. This expresses itself in buds, blossoms, flowers, and eventually luscious fruits that the trees will produce in the upcoming spring and summer. Man is compared to a tree of the field. At times it seems that he too is totally stripped of any spiritual life, with little or no connection to God and his Torah. Yet the Pintele Yid, that's French, the indestructible spark of one's godly soul, lies dormant under the surface. It waits for an opportunity to burst forth and flower with spiritual growth that can erase years and even decades of apathy, transforming it into a life of spirituality. We view the life, the renewal, even before it actually comes out as the flower, the bud, the flower, the tree, the plant, and the fruit. You know, when the yeshiva that I was teaching in Israel, so we dealt with many boys who were not necessarily coming as motivated as others might have been. And the Manal of the yeshiva of Mandelkorn, Zechona Levracha, we used to get together every couple of weeks and discuss each of the boys. How are they doing? Are their needs being met? What can we do better? Right? And he introduced a term that I loved: an attitudinal change. An attitudinal change. Is he getting up for davening? No way. Is he coming to classes? Yeah. But there's an attitudinal change. Tu B'Shvat. Sometimes there could be a change that is not necessarily visible yet on the outside, but the sap is rising. The change is happening. The perspective is growing, is shifting. And then there's no limit to where that can lead to. Of all of these New Years that are not Torah-based, the one that we make a big deal about is Tu B'Shvat. We don't make a big deal about the New Year for the animals. And Rabbi Leo Kitov, in the book of our heritage, which is required reading for those who are undergoing a conversion process, and if it would be required reading for all Jews, right, we would be that much better off, that much more knowledgeable. And he writes about this in particular. He writes, what is special about this new year, that it is celebrated while the others mentioned in the Mishnah, with the exception of the first of Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah pass without any recognition? And he says the reason is that this new year concerns itself with the praise of the land of Israel. For it is on this day that the land renews its vigor to give forth produce, to bear fruit, and to show its praiseworthiness. And the land of Israel is praised for its fruit. The day upon which the land of Israel renews its vigor to bring forth its goodness and its sweetness, is a day of joy for the Jewish people, for whom it is a heritage, a love, and a longing. So the reason that this was established as the Rosh Hashanah that we actually note on our calendar and have certain practices that accompany it is in order to make sure to acknowledge the love and to instill the love and to inspire the love for our land of Israel, which we mentioned before, I forget in which context, how the land was dormant. We all know Mark Twain's report in the mid 1800s that even the tumbleweeds seem lonely over there, and how it has flowered and blossomed with the return of its people. Yes, Leah.
Two questions. So, my understanding that Tu B'Shvat is directly related to the land of Israel. It should be celebrated only there, not here.
No.
This
No. I would say Leil Kitov is saying the reason why this has become part of our calendar is for so long we have been outside of Israel to make sure that we maintain that connection to Israel wherever we are. Right? So even outside of Israel, people will have fruits on that day, right? We'll have of the fruits. We'll soon see some examples of the fruits that the land of Israel is praised. That's the grapes and the pomegranates and the figs and the olives and figs.
How about planting trees? That's a main thing.
Yeah, in Israel. Yeah. See, here we don't necessarily go planting trees over here. You have to get a license from the city. In Irvine, it's not so simple, right? People will send money to have trees planted in Israel, right? But it's really the land of Israel that is meant to be our focus during this time. Okay. Let's take a look at source number 7. The Bach explains why we should and why indeed we do request the ability to partake of the fruits of Israel. There is an intrinsic holiness to the land of Israel. This holiness is not limited to the spiritual realm. The holiness actually manifests itself in a physical form as well. The fruits that are nurtured from the earth of the land of Israel not only extract water and nutrients from the land, they extract the holiness of the land as well. Right? This whole idea of tithing the produce, that's only in Israel. Outside of Israel, a person is not agricultural, so we tithe our earnings to give to tzedakah, as we mentioned before. But if I'm growing fruit or vegetables over here, there is no law, there is no tithing that is done over here. It's part of the spiritual aspect of the land. The fruits extract the holiness of the land as well. When partaking of the fruits, we ingest physical nourishment as well as also spiritual sustenance. So we don't have many halachic ramifications of this day, right? Certainly not, right? Certainly outside the land of Israel. But we have, even outside of Israel, these customs which are, as Rabbi Eliel Kitov wrote, a way of expressing our yearning for the land of Israel, for the Holy Land. Number 8, since the time that we were exiled, even though we were prevented from fulfilling the mitzvah of the land that pertain to the day of Tu B'Shvat, several celebratory customs have developed amid the diaspora to mark this day. We've even found a special liturgy, which is something like an Amida prayer in honor of this day, which was written in the land of Israel some 1,000 years ago. Most of these customs revolved around consumption of fruit, recitation of prayers, and expressions of the praise for the land and its fruit. There also is a whole Kabbalistic aspect of Tu Bishvat, right? On one hand, we know the very first sin began with eating from the fruit of a tree that we were not supposed to eat from. And therefore, we see that this gets to the very, very core of who we are. And there are those that learn on a Kabbalistic level that eating the fruit on Tu B'Shvat comes as a tikkun, as a means of rectifying that original chet, sin, of eating from a tree. The pasuk in Devarim seems to say, Ki Adam, we'll see over here, Ki Adam eitz ha-sadeh. It says there in Devarim, Ki tatsur al-ir, when you lay siege to a city, Yamim Rabim, for many days, Lilachem aleh, to do battle against it. Litafsa, in order to capture the city. Lo tashchit et eitzah, do not destroy its trees. Lindoach alav garzen, by swinging your axe against them. Kimimenu tochal, from them you will eat. V'oto lo tichrot, and it you shall not cut down. Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh lavo lefanecha, lavo mifanecha b'matzor. Right? So on one level, it's saying, is the tree of the field like a person? That you're going your siege against the tree? Right? Don't go against the trees. But the way that it is worded is actually Ki Adam eitz hasadeh. A person is like the eitz hasadeh. A person is like the tree of the field, in which case Tu B'Shvat will have many teachings for us humankind. How is it that we are like eitz hasadeh? So the Maharsha writes, source number 10, Kamosha ilan ose pero tovot, kach maseim hein peroteyem. Just as a tree bears good fruit, so too the actions of a person, those are our fruit. Right? Famously, the very beginning of the Torah, by Noach, the pasuk says, Eila toldot Noach. These are the generations of Noach. And then we interrupt. We say, Noach ish tzaddik. Noach was a righteous man. Tamim haya b'dorotav. Right? He was full in his generation. Eta Elohim halach Noach. Noach walked with God. Right? And then we say he had 3 sons, Shem, Cham, and Yafet. So we said, these are the generations of Noach. Then we start discussing all these things about Noach being righteous. And then we give his generations. Why the interruption? Rashi there gives 2 approaches. Approach number 1 is Zecher Tzaddik Livracha. You mentioned a tzaddik, you've got to extol his blessings. These are the generations of Noach. Oh, did you say Noach? Oh, Noach is a righteous person, walked with God, etc., etc. And now let me continue my sentence. Shem, Cham, Yafet were the names of his 3 sons. Rashi's other explanation is no. There are different types of toldot. There are our physical toldot, our children, and there also is another type of generations that we give birth to, and that is Ma'asim Tovim, our good acts. And therefore, it's not an interruption. These are the toldot of Noach. These are his generations, his good deeds, and his children. So a person is like an eitz hasadeh, like the tree of the field in our actions. The Maharal, as he often does, takes this to a different level, and he writes, man is called a tree of the field, as the verse says, Eitz hasadeh, ki adam eitz hasadeh. But he really is an upside down tree. For a tree's roots are in the ground below, while man's roots are above. We talk about a shoresh haneshama, the root of our soul, which is up. So our roots are up, and we extend down into this world. His soul is the source of his being, and it exists in the spiritual world. Man's hands are his branches, his legs, the branches off of those branches, while his body is the trunk. For a tree's sustenance is from the ground, while man's sustenance, our existence, our continued life comes from above, is from the heaven. That is where we come from. There are also other deeper lessons that we learn out from Tu B'Shvat, from the trees, and that gives us insight into the cycles of our life. Rabbi Ephraim Nissenbaum writes very beautifully, let us examine the comparison between man and trees in order to understand the message of Tu B'Shvat for humankind. The tree goes through cycles in its life. The heavy-laden tree of summer empties itself of fruit in the autumn and then slowly loses its leaves one by one. By wintertime, the tree stands shorn of its previous glory. For all purposes, it appears to have died. But then comes Tu B'Shvat. In the midst of the cold winter days when all vegetation seems frozen or dead, the sap starts to flow beneath the surface bark. Rising slowly from roots buried in the hardened soil, the sap pushes its way up, pumping new life into the outstretched branches that reach towards the heavens. In life, we too often go through cycles of growth. Periods of renewal and growth may alternate with times of stagnation or dormancy. Rosh Shlomo Volbe Zatzal writes that this cycle is part of man's nature. He adds that a person must not become disillusioned when spiritual growth seems halted. The low period will usually be followed by a high period that will yield new opportunities for growth. We term that Yerida Litzorech Aliyah, that we sometimes go down in order to then be able to go up again afterwards. That is the message of Tu B'Shvat. Even when we feel lethargic, in a rut, and seem to have lost the drive to achieve, we must not despair. Just as winter is an annual hiatus in the life cycle of trees, so bouts of lethargy and unproductivity are necessary phases in the human cycle. Just as with the coming of spring, life-giving sap moves imperceptibly through the trees to branches stretching to the sky, so we too will have renewed energy from deep within our spiritual reservoirs, as long as we set our goal heavenward. We can learn a lot. I often say, when I took biology with my daughter, that was the greatest Musar book that I ever read. And we could learn so much and be so inspired by the incredible godly wisdom that we find in the world all around us. The Torah is called, we sing this very beautifully every Shabbos, the Torah is called Eitz Chaim Hi. So Tu B'Shvat is about the trees. The Torah is referred to as Eitz Chaim Hi, Lamachazikim Ba. It is a tree of life for those who grasp it. V'tomcheha me'ushar, and those who hold it up, who support it, are praised. The Torah is called Eitz Chaim Hi. Right? Interesting, right? Adam and Chava had to be banished from the Garden of Eden, lest they would come and eat from the Eitz HaChaim, the tree of life. Yet we have the Torah. Then is our Eitz Chaim. That is the way for us to get back. Right? And it's interesting. Right? This Shabbos, Mrs. Rena Foreman and Rabbi David Foreman will be here. Right? And Rabbi Foreman says very beautifully, we find keruvim, these cherub-like figures on top of the Aron. The only other time in the Torah, this is well documented, the other time in the Torah that it's written that we find keruvim were placed outside the Garden of Eden to make sure we would not return there. But then they're placed on top of the Aron, and they're also embroidered on the curtain that hangs by the Holy of Holies. And they're also embroidered on some of the outer curtains, right? And it's in effect saying, this is the way back. This is the way to reconnect to Hashem, taking us right to that Aron, the ark, where the Luchos, the Torah written by Moshe, that is the Eitz Chaim Hi La Machazikim Ba. The Torah is that tree of life for those who hold on to it. The same way that if a person, Rav Aaron Kotler writes very beautifully, it's through the Torah that we connect to Hashem. That is our connecting point. The person is in a river, is in the ocean, right? And he grabs onto a tree, then that is how that person is able to stay afloat and to move on to greater things, right? When we hold on to the tree of life, onto the Eitz Chaim, onto the Torah, then the Torah holds on to us, and that becomes a source of life for us, right? V'tomcheh machazikim ba, you grab it, it grabs you, and it is then this Eitz Chaim Hi, this source, this tree of life for us. So Tu B'Shvat, right, is not just Tu B'Shvat Higiya Chag La'ilano. Right, it's not just the kids' song that they sing in the preschools and the lower grades, but it teaches us much about life. And we all have our times of feeling somewhat sapped, right? And we find that we need to know that there is renewal that is coming. We need to ride through those periods and make sure that we are ready to reaccept and to be reinvigorated as we go forward. I remember there was one Erev Shavuot where I was really worn out. I forgot what year it was going on. I was really worn out. And I turned to Natalie and I said, I don't know how I'm going to forget about how I'm going to like energize everybody to stay up all night learning. I know how I'm going to stay up all night, right? But then you come and other people are around, and we draw our energy from one another, and we had a beautiful Shavuos that year. So we all go through our periods when we're feeling depleted. And as Rav Volbe writes in his Alei Shor, we need to know, he's actually quoting Rabbeinu Tam over there, the cycles that we go through. And that we have to know that is part. A person who thinks that spiritual growth is going to be like this is going to be seriously disappointed. Right? That's how it works. We have our ups, we have our downs, we have our times that we're feeling all energized, times that we're feeling like we are, to quote Jackson Brown, running on empty, right? And we work our way through, and hopefully the cycle is one that just keeps on heading upward with those inevitable dips along the way. Okay, everybody. Once again, thank you, Ken, and thank you everybody for joining us today. You're very, very welcome. And we have a very special Shabbos coming up. So all those who can join us, please do. Rena Foreman will give me a class after the meal. And if you're not signed up to eat the meal with us, come afterwards, join us for dessert, and join us for the class. She will also be giving a class after our Kiddush luncheon Shabbos day, and her husband, Rabbi David Foreman, will be giving the drasha Shabbos morning. So it should prove to be a very, very special Shabbos for all those who can join us. Okay, everybody. Be well, Kathy. Caller number 1.
It's me, Rabbi Gabriella.
Hi, Gabriella. Good.
Got to
Okay.
talk. Thank you.
You're very welcome.